The last person signed, so like the signatures are done. I don't know what else is post signature if they need to prepare something else. But wow, there's already 8 people. Jeez.
Gosh. Okay, I guess we better entertain them with some actual machine learning content or generative AI content. Yeah.
What's the deal with training?
Listen, so if it's AI, it's already intelligent. If it's machine learning, it's like then you gotta train, right? I feel like I don't know where I'm going with this.
Okay, so last night, even though I try really hard to avoid this topic, someone asked me the AGI question. And I came up with a new response, which I haven't decided if
it's the AGI question.
Yeah. Are current capability LLMs AGI? Are they already? And I try really hard to avoid this question, but last night I gave an answer that I'm not sure if I like yet. I'm thinking about it still. So here's my answer. Consider the arbitrarily large set of intellectual tasks that you can ask a human to do that involve sort of like natural language responses. You either tell them a lot of information or you show them a lot of printed information, and then you ask them to respond like verbally, we'll just argue, or written, doesn't really matter. Take this arbitrarily large set, which is probably infinite, but infinite can be a little bit tricky to describe in this context. And then ask every human on Earth all of those questions. And then ask all of those questions to the LLM and ask where the LLM performs in that distribution. Is it better than 5% of humans? Is it better than 10% of humans? So you've got one percentile for every single question and an infinite set of questions. And so I think what I roughly believe is that as long as the set of questions for which it is in the 0th percentile is of measure 0, it's not AGI.
So like it has to cover all of human capability.
It has to approximately cover all of human capability some. So like it could be the 1st percentile across every question possible, totally fine. It could be the 1st percentile over every question possible minus an arbitrarily large but still measure 0 subset. Still AGI. But the second that the density is sufficient in this infinite set of evaluations where it is 0th percentile, then it's not AGI.
Then based on your definition, are we there yet? It sounds
and unanswerable.
Because if you think about that specific set of questions, and if you just test it across many different domains, don't you think that it's almost maybe the first quantile or even at least median?
In many questions, I think the answer is clearly yes. Like there's so many tasks that humans are actually quite poor at.
Exactly.
And there are so many tasks that humans are fine at and agents are already really good at. But what I'm really curious about is when you focus on the things that are like, I don't know, more subtle and like hard.
What are those tasks?
Yeah, like a perfect example I think of this is like convince somebody else of what the ocean smells like. I think of questions like this, where I'm not convinced that agents have much here.
Is this because of like a lack of like sensors, or is it just like we do not have language in the training data that could express what the ocean smells like? Because I feel like it could.
Agreed. And I think there is an interesting sensor question, totally. But I think this reminds me of that XKCD thing of like Googling something that no one's ever Googled before. Like,
Oh, it happens all the time with some error
Right.
messages.
I think there's this like the unbounded nature of the things that you can ask a human to reply with text to. When you really start looking at like the darker corners of that, I think the agent is still quite poor. And
Yeah.
that's what makes me think it's not AGI.
I don't know.
But I
Isn't
don't
your
I mean,
Isn't-
I can't ask a question that's 300,000 tokens long to Opus, you know what I mean?
Agreed.
But wouldn't your definition mean that we are deliberately trying to look for negative evidence, but that's just hard to find?
No, you're totally right. That's why it's a very mathy like approach, because we look for contradictions. It's easier to prove something's not true by finding a contradiction
Yeah,
is to prove
but the
it.
absence of something that's absence of evidence doesn't mean that it's not true.
But I would not argue that this is looking for an absence of evidence. This is more of a like true assertion here.
Gotcha.
Which is,
Okay.
Yeah, if it were possible to assess all of humanity on these questions, if it were possible to build a large approximation of this entire space of questions, then
What
this
if
is
we
yeah. Go ahead.
What if we just narrow it down to the space of questions that one could ever encounter in education or in the workforce?
Okay, here's the one I like to think about, which is AGI is a system that can produce like economically valuable work.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right. So if you say like let's precondition this to like, economic value, it's like, oh, I feel like we're not there yet, but there's no way we're not close.
There's definitely a lot of work that it can do now that is definitely economically valuable. I'm pretty certain of that. Like
So this
data
also
labeling and the data.
This also came up last night, which is like, if you ask the question,
What are you drinking? What are you smoking to have all these deep questions with all his friends?
I don't think either one of we each had one beer, so it was not exactly like
That's really good beer.
Company you keep, as they say.
I
But like, I think
I had a happy hour last night, and none of our questions were this deep.
So like, are we working towards AI applications that are economically prosperous or economically like negative? I think most of the AI companies that I'm seeing, they're more about like building things that save cost or increase efficiency. Have we seen many examples of applied AI products that are creating more value or like,
I like that.
Raising like global GDP even?
I like that a lot because, yeah, I am inclined to believe that, like, I don't know if we're increasing GDP at all.
I mean, if you think about it, so let's try to understand this a little bit. Let's just take a very simple example, maybe code generation or summarizing a book. Is that economically positive or negative, or is it just a different way of thinking, wrong way of thinking about it? You could think about it in the sense that we are reducing cost to create that thing, that piece of content, or that system. But in the same time, isn't that increasing the utility that we get from limited human input?
I guess it would be like the time it would have taken me to get to that code has just decreased. There hasn't been a bound where like the code it generates is code I could not have written.
Yeah, so the time taken has decreased. Therefore, if the cost has decreased, and let's say the value is the same, therefore the profit should be an increase, right? The ROI should have gone up.
Oh yeah, you do some like discounted.
Yeah, I mean that's how I'm thinking about it. I mean, like a lot of the things that we're trying to do is not just to reduce costs of the human, but also increase the utility of what comes out of the person that's using the AI tool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, okay, like technology lets me sow the field faster, but does it actually allow me to like sow more fields?
Right. Or different.
Or do things that are not possible.
plants. Yeah.
I would say it does.
Okay.
I mean, imagine a Netflix movie. Let's just imagine a Netflix movie that's in Korean, and I would love to watch it in my native tongue. Let's say Mexican.
Totally.
Totally doable right now.
Yeah.
I think it's doable right now. And like in the past, maybe it's like, okay, maybe we had to pay someone to do all the dubbing and all that. And okay, if we look at it that way, maybe you're reducing that income. But in the other way, we are also increasing the utility that people can benefit from it. Yeah, I'm not sure how to measure some the economically negativeness or positiveness of something.
That's fair. I'm just curious, like, which AI products are more focused on this, like, no pun intended, but like more generative outcome as opposed to efficiency wins. Because almost all the AI applications I've seen are really targeted on efficiency wins.
Can you give an example? I mean, without being too
Copilot
specific.
is the most clear. Like
Right.
that is-
Efficiency wins. I see.
yeah.
But doesn't that enable like a junior engineer to maybe write a code at the level of a senior engineer? No, maybe that's a system
I
design
don't think
thing.
that's actually true. I just
Maybe the opposite.
right, like
It enables all senior engineers to write code as good as a junior engineer.
but also just like I don't know. Like I'm not like I still feel the code is bad. Like so. I mean, I just don't. Because if you can't. Okay, so before, like taste is important because if you have taste and you paint, you can critique your own work, and then you can like incrementally go in the direction that is better work.
Yep.
But if you still have bad taste and you're given 10 paintings, you can't like pick the right painting out.
Can the Copilot help with critiquing your painting and your code?
I think the Copilot it will generate for you paintings with low variance from which you have to sample from.
But could it also help with critique? I mean, we could just ask it. We could copy the paste and code into Claude.
Like average, right? Like I'm more convinced they'll bring it to average than to like superhuman. Because like, how the fuck do you evaluate? Like, how do you subsample your data to be like higher quality? Like, well, that's like
I think that
like,
even an average model can return superhuman output in the sense by making the model work harder. So a silly example of this is, imagine if you had GPT-4 and you just ask it to zero shot something, right? Versus if you had GPT 3.5 and you get few shot prompts, you ask it, make it do chain of thought and reflect. It's likely that the output will be better than GPT-4 and therefore pushed on the likely also exceed the average human. Do you think so? And also let's say if I'm writing code and maybe that encourages me, okay, I need to write this code this way, but let's think of it the other way, whereby I just write 2 test cases and I provide the test cases, and then it helps me write that code that maybe I could never have written. Because I've seen quite a number of times where a coding assistant definitely generates above average code. I'm pretty sure Brian has seen a lot of this specifically in his work.
I just feel like above average is almost just like, I don't want to put in the effort to get average code, so I'm going to put in below average effort, and then the LLM brings me to average. Like, I wouldn't have written the type hints because I'm just like trying to work fast, and then it does it.
Yeah.
Like, I would have written the list comprehension, but like it creates like, a much clearer definition. But like I don't think it's ever gone like, you should refactor this whole thing. That's not how it works.
We could try asking it too. I recently tried using it for this workflow where I had pretty much what I wanted working, but I didn't really like the way that I implemented it. Basically, like I had like classes and then I had like these like factory functions, and the way that they were working together was a little bit like hard to reason about, and B, there was a lot of like coupling that I wasn't super happy with. Mm-hmm. And so I asked it sort of like, I gave it all the ingredients, and I was like, these are the things I don't like about this. and it proposed a couple things. Granted, a lot of the things it proposed were nonsense. Some of them like wrote the code completely, but like, and then other ones were just like honestly step down. I do think that like collaboratory effort did get me to a better place. But you could also argue, I think what Jason might argue is like, I'm starting from a below average place and I'm just trying to get to average with the tool, as opposed to starting above average and trying to go higher.
Yeah.
It's obviously hard to measure like what average is, but yeah.
It's like our only evaluation for code really is like, did it run
Test
well?
cases.
Like the
latency
order impact of like, is okay, 6 months from now we needed to add new features, and like, could you add the feature in 2 days or 2 weeks? And then you're like,
and also how robust it is, like pipelines.
Evaluate that, right? Like, it's really
hard to boil it down to a number.
And
but I think senior engineers can read it and could
sure. And like we have like I think we have the oh shit detector of just like like we're using a lot of keyword arguments. I think there's gonna be some like combinatoric explosion of like edge cases we're gonna have to. So let me like make some class methods.
So let me give you an example, right? And this is an actual example of me writing, not writing code. I won't give an example of writing code per se, but let's say writing something for my site. And I've written something, and then what I do is I actually give it a persona, ask it to act as an editor and critique the writing and improve on it. So very many often the time is actually able to improve on it. It's like saying, oh, this part is a bit confusing. It expands on certain things. It adds an example to. I think what LLMs can do is they can add. So I think what Jason that maybe doesn't like is that Jason thinks that a true artist is able to subtract until it's only left with what's left. But I found that LLMs, whenever they edit things, they only add things most of the time. So, but I definitely think that it's definitely able to almost, I find it it's not often that it actually does not, that I don't get value out of it. And to be clear, I'm using Opus.
Okay.
So, but I've seen the same thing for GPT-4 when I was using it.
So I was like, yeah, give me a critique, make it better. Give me a critique, make it better.
Yeah.
But like a lot of it is still just like, it's like shaking me towards like something mediocre.
The average, right?
Because
also, I don't know.
The best articles that go viral are like
high perplexity.
Like, the number of views is directly proportional to like the hours I spent. Like, there has been no outliers of just like I spent little time plus 8
That's
hours.
not true. Isn't the best performing article like 4 hours? Didn't you say that? Oh, you wrote that over 2 days over Christmas.
That's a long time for me. Right?
That's a long time. Okay, shoot.
It was just speech to text. Like this is just me.
Wow.
But like when you do the like this is my ideas, like fill that out for me. Like it's just so average. It's just so average. Even like less good writing that's more human is above average. Like the advice article, I think is like it's above average, but it's not because of like structure or
No, it's true. I would agree with that, and I think
seasoning that like made it above average. I don't really have a good way of describing.
If I had to quantify it, I would say that article was above average because it was high perplexity. That is very different from.
Yeah, Benjamin Walter calls this aura. It's like the difference between like handmade things and mass-produced things is handmade things contain aura.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Right. So if you think about perplexity measures of language modeling, the goal is always to try to reduce perplexity. But when you're producing content or writing or sharing insight, it's always high perplexity. Yeah, so that's the difference. So maybe the ideas are high perplexity, but the writing style and reading ability, and the language, you sort of want it to be low perplexity, so it's easy to understand, but high perplexity so that your ideas are insightful and thoughtful.
Yeah, but that's why I think it's just like I don't think AI has never done anything like exceptional.
Really? We should debate this a bit more. I mean, like I've seen papers like alpha geometry whereby like Google train a model to perform at the level of a math Olympiad.
Yeah, but I don't think these are like the generic models.
Yeah,
I can be better at
it's not the.
I like just try 10 times harder at the specific thing.
This reminds me of the chess question that's been going around lately.
Yeah.
How much time does it take to defeat Kasparov? I do need to run, but
okay.
thanks for entertaining my questions.
It's fun. It's fun.
Yeah.
Eugene, I gotta say my my update on the personal assistant angle, because I had my first interaction that I don't know how I would have prompted it, which was, she was just like, "Oh, I saw that you had like a bunch of like travel booked. Do you want some help with like organizing that for me?" Yeah, you. I was like, "Oh yeah, sure." And she came back, because I was like, I figured out all your like landing and your like check-in schedules and your checkouts. I noticed you had like meetings between your check-in and the checkouts. Like, do you want me to reschedule them? That's like the thing that was like, oh yeah, like I don't know if like GPT-4 could do that.
No, yeah, for sure it wouldn't be. An agent doesn't have initiative or proactivity.
Right. Like you could really you could build that edge case.
I think you could run a cron job that runs a self-reflect on something and could do that.
Yeah, but it was specifically like, oh, like you're checking, like you have the calendar booked for like build like Airbnb 1 and Airbnb 2. There's a 4-hour gap where you're not going to be indoors.
I see. Yeah.
Therefore, I'm gonna like move some stuff around, and I was like, oh shit, like.
Yeah, I think like a year ago, when I was really trying it, and I guess where I'm coming from is that a year ago when I was really trying large language models, and a lot of people be asking me, can I do this, can I do that? And I'm like, no, it's probably just a stochastic parrot. And I've been really trying to push it to the edges, and I almost find that there's very little that it cannot do.
If you tell it what to do, right?
Yes, you have to tell it what to do. The human is always
like you are adding like.
That's true. So now it becomes,
if you made a plastic cup by hand, it's not actually the same as the injection mold plastic cup.
Exactly. So what I'm finding now is that it is easier to do things, but what is even more important, and actually probably was very important in the past, but far more important now, is figuring out the right things to do.
Yeah.
And that's how I'm tweaking my mindset, because what I'm thinking is that, I guess recently you mentioned something about not hiring junior engineers.
Yeah.
Why is that? I can share my perspective, but you can share yours.
Yeah, I think in the beginning, like earlier this year, I was like, oh yeah, like high agency is like all that matters, right?
Yes.
But then what ends up happening is like, I don't know if that's true anymore. I think high agency takes you to, like, high agency is important, but I think there is this value of like focus and prioritization that is good for like execution within a business, right? And it's like, if you're high agency, you might be more willing. You might spend twice as long doing something. You might do like twice as much of it. But if you're like very high, like Brownian motion, because you don't know what to focus on, you know.
I see. So you're talking about the balance, not just have high agency, but being able to focus it as a laser.
Yeah, right. Like, I think the senior folks are probably lower agents. Like, I'm fucking lazy as shit. But I will just do one thing, and the thing I'm gonna do should not take more than an hour and a half.
I see.
Right. So in like, I'm high agency in other ways, I believe, but also I recognize that like I am way lazier than all of you.
I think we can debate that, but yeah.
You know what I mean when I say that, right?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
It's like I would not try to like figure out like whether or not I decide to do parallelism when I run a test will be based off like like
how much time
is this worth it? Like how long do I expect this to run versus how many times do I expect this to fail? And like,
and how many times do I run in the future? Yeah.
Right, and then all that kind of comes into I'm gonna write a for loop.
I agree.
Versus someone be like, oh, Jason, like I was worried that like I was doing a lot of jobs, so I wrote this async thing and I didn't know if async was the right thing, so I tried to go down like multi-threading, right? And
Okay,
then
so that's high agency, but poor judgment.
yeah, right, because you're like, wow, you did a lot of research, but like, why?
That was what I found is that judgment is extremely key. So even if someone has low agency, but if you're able to coach them on judgment, which I don't know if it's even possible, I think it's very hard. Coach them on judgment, they will have the right judgment to realize that this is a problem that needs to be solved, even though if they are low agency.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I'm like super lazy in that regard, but I still think there is success because like the judgment of just going like like with this async example is like, you know, one of the things that happened recently was like I would just like if I was told to do something and I didn't think it made sense, I would just not do it.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, oh, you want me to do it? Doesn't make any sense. Like I'm just.
I think it's also because you have enough confidence to know that hey, the results matter, not just the exact
like
step by step. Yeah.
in physics, there's often examples where like I'll do a problem and the problem I get a different answer, and sometimes I'll just be like, textbook's wrong.
How often does that happen?
But like you gotta know. Because like
Yeah.
I remember moments in physics where like my friends and I were doing this problem, we both got a different answer, and we were just like, textbook's wrong.
I see.
That's like
so with multiple data points, yeah.
right. But like you gotta be able to believe that. Like and I think that just doesn't like that's a muscle you develop too, of just going like, yeah, textbook's wrong. Like
Yeah. I think that makes sense. One thing, tell me about your post hoc bill. Like, how did that happen?
oh, I just went viral. I got like 30,000 views on my Hacker News from Hacker News, and then
And 30,000 views is cost that much?
it's because I turned on like mouse tracking. So like every view, I was tracking like how long they're looking at the page and like how many seconds and like every mouse movement and like how they click. So I got a refund. It was fine.
Wow, that's crazy. Okay, because you're tracking mouse movements. Okay.
Yeah, because for me the docs was like, oh, I want to know when you come to the landing page, do you go to cookbooks or examples? If too many people go to cookbooks, I'm gonna move it forward.
Do you need the mouse movement anyway in that case? No, or you just need the lineage?
Oh, but I like watch them.
Okay.
Yeah, like
wow.
I take like 10 minutes like a day just going like looking at people who like, for anyone who spends like 5 minutes on the website, I just like take a look. Oh, like
Oh, that's cool actually.
they're just clicking around like, oh, they're reading a blog post. You're like, oh, they're reading a blog post, and then they decide to look at the cookbook and you know. Yeah. Okay, let's answer this question while I
Tech career newbie. Okay, I have a clear answer. But I would like maybe Jason can answer.
I'm gonna go eat this granola bar.
Okay, so my answer, which may or may not be popular, is that if you are new, you are junior, I think that it is more valuable to go to a larger company and learn all about how things break at scale and the mechanisms they have to prevent it. Things like on-call, operational excellence, monitoring, alarming, etc. Learn about things. You will probably ship slower. You will probably may have less impact individually, but more impact as part of your team, as part of your org. Just learn all the hopefully good practices and also have enough sense of taste to know when a process is overly conservative and maybe slowing down shipping speed, and then go to a smaller pond whereby you have more say and autonomy and now try things out yourself. Why do I say this is that oftentimes I think this will work if you have a good mentor or coaches in your larger companies. Oftentimes what I see is that a lot of juniors, they join a small startup, and what happens is that okay, the CTO or the head of their science doesn't have enough time to coach them. So they're really left struggling on their own. Yes, they get to do a lot. But if they had some guidance, such as in a larger company, from a decent mentor, because there's so many senior software engineers around, if you can find one who's a good mentor, you can learn a lot more than in a small company directly.
I roughly agree. I mean, it's hard for me to say, mostly because like Waterloo, the university I came from, Waterloo, we did like 7 internships.
That's crazy.
So like I spent like 4 months with a 12-person team, a 50-person team, a 100-person team. I spent 4 months at Facebook and then a research lab. And so you just see everything. And I think the biggest places I've learned is when I was kind of a research assistant with effectively no supervision. And when I was a data scientist at Facebook, where like, oh, there must be a way things are the way they are, and let me reflect deeply on whether or not this is a good thing or a bad thing. But I think for all of that, like the real thing that you got to learn is to like think critically about your environment, right? Like when I was at a small company, I was like, oh, this is how you do sales. This is how you like prioritize. Like this is how you like ruthlessly prioritize. At a big company, it was, oh, this is how a big company can stay agile by doing these things. Like even at Facebook, you could just like find someone's desk and be like, hey, are you the engineer that built this thing? Oh, we have a problem.
Yeah.
And you could do that. And like knowing that like
you could.
If Facebook can do that and you're at a startup and you can't do that, something's wrong with the startup.
Yes. I agree, and the thing is, you also need to learn that even when you're a big company with all these processes and like someone saying that create a ticket, there's nothing wrong with walking up to them and ask them, hey, do you have 2 minutes? I do that all the time, and that's almost how I sort of earned trust and started getting context. So I don't know if that answers your question, Abhishek.
I also want
to. We can find agentic moves. Can we not bootstrap our way?
I think this is just about the fact that, if you were building like a personal assistant, like you could sort of come up with all these rules again. But then what you find out is like, oh man, we've been doing this the whole time. Like nothing has changed. Right? Like we could have like, well, then we're doing the same thing as we did in like the 1980s with we just do it in Python versus like a state machine. Like, I think that's like the main issue.
Yeah, I think to Evan's question, imagine an agent, right? So the problem with agent, so in the past I debated someone, hey, agents don't have proactivity or they don't have initiatives. But then I was corrected by saying that, what do you mean? It's like, oh, I'm saying the agent doesn't know how to do something on its own. Well, what if you continuously feed it a stream of information, like your latest email or your latest calendar update? And also collect traces of, let's say, what Jason's PA is doing or executive assistant is doing and how they're thinking of it. Therefore, now your agent learns to see that, okay, the PA sees this calendar, the PA takes these steps. And you could sort of train yourself you could sort of eventually get that agent. So there's 2 things. One is that the input stream of data needs to be there. If not, the agent has no understanding of what's happening in the real world. And then the second thing is that if you need to fine tune your agent or prompt your agent, you sort of need those successful examples of what is good behavior, valuable and effective behavior. Yeah, or we could use sub agents for that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's mostly like a reliability thing, Like,
it's definitely a reliability thing right now.
Having tested like all these like behind waitlist AI agents, it's like, man, they like blow you away one time, and then you're left like chasing that high of something useful.
The thing is, a lot of I think in terms of personal assistance, the reliability, or rather virtual personal assistance, the reliability is still maybe not quite there yet.
Yeah, it ends up being like it's like when you're like dating a guy and then he like buys you flowers once and never buys you flowers ever again, and you're just wondering.
How do you know my dating, my modus operandi? No, I'm kidding.
But you know what I mean. it did this thing once, like maybe they can do it again, and it just never happens. Like, hey, that's basically what has happened for every agentic experience I've had, where it's like, whoa, it did, holy shit, it did the thing. And then my expectations are so high, and then it never does it again. I'm like, oh, this is not that good.
Yeah, that's interesting actually. I think what you see is a very extreme example whereby it only works once. It only works the first time.
Yeah.
What I would be really curious, and this is what I'm starting to do with a lot of the tasks that I'm getting a model to do, is that a lot of people say, it's not reliable enough. What I then eventually do is I try to get a random uniform sample of human performance. Let's see if I just getting 10 random humans to do it. And then the humans, of course, will have a natural error rate. And of course, the machines will have a natural error rate. What I find a lot of times is that a lot of times the machine error rate is not that much higher from the human error rate, or sometimes even lower. So an example of this is that, let's say you give something to a very strict QA, and then the QA will be like, oh, the agent translated this wrongly or summarized this wrongly. Oh, that's not an agent, that's actually a human. It's like, now suddenly it changes. It reminds people that, hey, humans are not infallible as well. And then that may be an easier conversation towards putting something into production, and also the amount of errors or risk you can tolerate.
Yeah.
UX problem.
Yeah. I just found that like the more I'm working with her, I was like, oh man, like there are some things that like I am not thinking about at all. And, like I can't prompt this. Like maybe what we need is to have like really great EAs work with a great CTO to build like a personal assistant company. Like,
oh, that'd be great
this
actually.
is like having like tech bros with no compassion trying to build personal assistants.
Actually, I'm pretty sure that they're collecting traces
for people and do their emails
right now.
Pardon?
I'm pretty sure they're collecting traces, like this activity traces, right? All these agent companies, I think the main thing is, okay, there are a few main things. Input data, memory, but yeah, I think another key ingredient is traces.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, which is like, most companies are not doing that. They're just like, oh, what humans want is to be able to schedule a meeting.
Yeah, Cal.
Right. And not
I switched to cal.com after I saw yours. It is actually a lot more effective. I like it a lot better than Calendar.
Do you have different tiers of cows now?
No, I just have one. Eugene only has two office hours slot, Monday and Wednesday, only half an hour, and they are almost always sold out. Yeah,
sold out.
Yeah, I
sold out.
That they are booked, so I don't actually make money off of them. The thing is, if I just have 2 non-work meetings in a week, or even 3, like sometimes external mentees or like office hours slots, I feel freaking exhausted. I don't even know how you can do so many meetings and like context switch like right, like consecutively. I actually don't know how. I actually don't know how some people do that. And Jason is probably the most extreme. And of course, most managers are probably the most extreme at that. Yeah. Jason, you're on mute. Okay, now repeat again with your fancy gesture. You're still on mute. Okay, yeah.
We see my calendar.
This calendar is a lot better than the last few I've seen.
But
you at least have time to pee.
Yeah,
and eat.
All different stuff. But
I am amazed. I actually try now to trim my calendar. It's like if something I don't need to be there, I just say no, and I just wait for someone to complain. Why the heck are you not at a meeting? If not, I just don't have time to write stuff or to code prototypes or something. Yeah, or even have Slack to think about what are the key problems that no one is thinking about.
That's why you hire an assistant.
That's true.
Like, she's just like, here's an email of all this meetings. Like, was one of the things I have her do is at the end of every week, for every domain name, find all the meeting transcripts and put them into Opus and ask for one summary. So it's like, hey, like you met with the CEO, CTO, 2 engineers, and did 2 stand-ups this week.
Nice. Oh, wow, that's great actually.
Right, you met with this co-founder twice. Here's a summary. You met with this founder once. Here's a summary, and I just like send them all out.
That's freaking amazing. I actually do something like that very similar at work, manually, of course, not with.
And then yeah, I go like, what's our like? List me some highlights and lowlights. They're in Notion. I can edit them and then send them back to the company. Like that
Can a
could,
large language model do that?
yeah, because I can just make a Zapier integration.
Sweet. Yeah. So that I think that's something that could be automated.
Yeah, because like I could go and build and say, okay, for all my calendars in a week, group by domain name, which is a regular expression. Fetch all the transcripts through this like API, concatenate them, make a post to Opus, plus some append prompt. You could do it,
That for sure it could do it. Yeah.
but like
It'd be pretty.
I would definitely pay like $50 a month for that.
You know, in Amazon, only L8s and above get EAs. So it's like Jason's already L8 with his own PA.
L8IC?
Yeah, L8 means ICs or directors.
Yeah.
Like L8 is like senior principal / director, depending on which track they're on, technical track or management track.
Yeah, but I also get help with like personal stuff now. I was just like, hey, like make a doc of like my Mexico plans.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah.
If you have time, like we'd love to get some restaurant recommendations.
What is the expected cost per month? Like you said, it goes up to a cap of 3,000, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't like really tracked yet.
Yeah, that'll be fun to know. Who else has questions to drop? I think it's a bit of a quiet week today. It's just Jason and me.
I'm just so personally so tired.
Yeah, I know you work. I think you work way too hard. So I'm excited for you and your Mexican vacation.
I don't work hard. I work long. That's the problem. I'll have less clients soon.
Because of the meetings, that's why you work long. But every meeting is not that hard.
Yeah, like meetings are not hard, but then like I finish at 7 p.m. but then I'll like go spend some time and then like, okay, time to code. Because I code for 2 clients. No, I code for 3 clients. Raycast, no, not Raycast. I code for Sandbar, I code for Rewind, I code for Narrow. And that's really difficult. Because you come back,
switching, right?
you like merge 56 commits and you're like, oh, where am I?
Oh, shoot. Oh, okay, because they're iterating so fast.
Yeah.
I see. And a single code base.
That is the most challenging part. The context switching is super easy. But like, yeah, working on like 3 different code bases is really challenging because you're like,
are they all Python or is it like TypeScript? And
2 is Python. 1, take care of it. 2 is Python, and then 1 of them is TypeScript. Rewind is TypeScript. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's just. I think it's not even like an unwillingness to like learn a new programming language because like I'm using it, but it's just like the skill gap is so different. You know what I mean? Like 12 years and 3 months is so different. Like I can't even describe what I know in Python, but the TypeScript, everything I don't know. I have. It's not. I mean, like there's like so much insecurity around like not doing it the right way and making up in the future that I know will happen if it's done poorly.
Why is it in TypeScript? Is it like client-side apps?
Yeah, it's like everything. The whole thing's on Vercel.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah, front end, back end, whatever. Let me see.
I have a few thoughts on this, but I'll let Jason go first.
Yeah, let's see. If you present work where you're the sole contributor, but you're part of a team, do you credit the team? I think it depends on your seniority. Like the more senior you are, the more every success is the team and every failure is yours.
Yes.
Right. When you're junior, I mean, when you're junior, it's also like the manager knows. So it's just a matter of like whether or not your manager knows. Because like the real question is like, what does the credit get you and why do you value it? Do you want to get recognition for a promotion? Do you recognition because you want to just tackle more scope and you don't care about the promotion. Like all those things kind of matter, but like the credit itself is not like the exciting thing. At least for me. I mean, now I realize I should have written more blog posts because that like applies for my visa application. But like,
Really? We should talk about that later. Yeah.
because like if I like wrote a blog at stitchfix.com, it would like if I wrote about
yeah.
it would be different than writing about flight on like jason.com. I think the big question is like, what is the credit in service of, and like other ways of like making that a little bit more concrete.
Yeah. So how I think about this is that openly, you should always credit your team to try to build everyone up, right? It's like and also depends if you're a manager or not. I think regardless of whether you're a manager or not, credit your team. And if you're the senior in your team, how you would think about it that way is that if something goes well, the credit is the team, it's the teams. If something goes shit, the responsibility is yours. So it's this view of extreme ownership. Now that's one approach we are working openly. Now, Jason touched on something which is if it's part of a promo process. So if it's part of a promo process, you may want to tweak it slightly. So this is the advice I got from a principal engineer. Ooh, what's that? Chocolate? I have no clue. So this is the advice I got from a mentor in the past. What does credit get you, and what you do you want it exactly? Do you want what it entails? Is very good advice. So the way I think about it, this is the advice I got from a principal engineer in the sense that if there are 4 people on a team working on something, and you focus on maybe let's say 2 out of 5 components, you should definitely play up on your contribution to the 2 out of 5 components. But it also doesn't mean that you didn't work on any of the other components at all. So what it means is that let's say if there are 4 people working on a project, it doesn't mean that each of them only get a quarter of the credit. What it means is that all of them get all of the credit, whereby the pie just expands. I don't know if that helps, Matt, but I that's how I like to think about it, where everyone just does more. Oh, partly skin, bro. Okay.
It's one of those things where you gotta like pry open and push out. It's not opening at all.
Oh, I see.
I'm gonna be drinking paper for sure. Yeah, I mean, I think the credit thing is just interesting because it is just like, what is it trying to unlock for you? Like, for me, getting credit is about being seen as an expert. It's less about the promotion. It's like, I just want you guys, like, when I say I did something, the consequence is like, I just want you to know that you can ask me for help and we can just solve this really quickly and like, move on. Or like, I don't take credit to like to the VP. I don't give a shit if he knows like whether I did it or not. My manager should know.
Yep, your manager should know. Yeah.
Like if I say I did something within like the team meeting, it's like, oh, this is the thing I worked on. If you have any questions, like let me know. Which is different from like the like.
And I actually think that as you become more senior, there's only one person that needs to know, or maybe even 2: your manager and your skip or sponsors. Right. As you become more senior, you don't have to always be the rock star. Instead, you should be giving the credit to the rest of the team to elevate them, to sponsor them so that they can take your position, so you can do harder problems. But I guess what's really important is at least for your manager to know. I think, Jason, there's a previous question from Abhishek. How important is it for a new ML engineer? Yeah.
AI engineer or ML engineer? Because ML engineer, you're never going to be writing TypeScript or JavaScript. But I think for like an AI engineer, very helpful. Yeah.
I think for me, I think a lot of folks focus on ML on the side of Python and deep learning. I actually think a big chunk of it is writing data pipelines. Maybe I'm just old school, but writing data pipelines, either Spark pipelines or I just use Spark pipelines most of the time. And in that case, I actually write my Spark code in Scala. So I find that it's really helpful. If you can access the data yourself, train the model yourself, and deploy the model yourself, you're almost an end-to-end, right? Given a problem, given a problem and the starting data, you can deploy a model that solves the problem. I think that's extremely valuable. And basically, you just learn whatever you need to do that. A lot of times it's Python. Sometimes it's maybe I think with Python you can probably do all of it. Even Spark supports Python, but I think a big chunk of it is also cloud services, depending on what cloud provider you're doing. Like, can you navigate the different AWS components? Can you figure out how to deploy a model on SageMaker with blue-green deployment and auto scaling? Or use EMR, Elastic MapReduce, for your Spark pipelines. So I think that's very valuable beyond just the front end stuff. Of course, knowing a little bit of front end is really nice. You can prototype really quickly and you can build very cool demos, get nice buy-in from your leadership in terms of, hey, here's how it works. You want something that's very interactive, right? Not just something dead. And TypeScript helps a lot of that. That's it. I've gotten very far with just regular Python and fast API and simple Jinja templates. Yeah. And of course, like Streamlit and Gradio helps a lot with that.
Sorry for just like being on mute and eating all the time. I just have not had any food today.
I know. I just had my Cliff Bar like while we were chatting, right? And my cocoa.
What was the MLE question that I forgot I tagged or something?
Like you wrote a post about being an MLE, so they wanted you to expand on it. I think it's more. I think it's related to the question on what is the stack for an ML engineer.
Oh, I think I wrote a piece recently about it, which was like, I think startups are like hiring MLEs too soon. Like they hire the MLE and they need more work for them to do, and they're like in TypeScript and just like eating shit. I feel really bad. And the other one is like, I think we're not promoting people internally to become more AI engineers. So there's always like 2 or 3 really excited engineers that are like pushing the AI stuff forward, but like, they're standing out, and I feel like we're not recognizing them enough and giving them like a new role around building them up to be more quantitative while knowing the engineering skills. And by not doing that, you end up trying to convince yourself that you need to hire an MLE. They join, they have no work to do, and they're like bored because they have to do build errors. And then the guy who like can do build errors and is AI curious, you're kind of like holding them back. So I just like find it really tough to be hiring or even be consulting these big companies, because they're just like, man, like there's always one guy we tried to hire, no work to do. There's another guy really excited, too busy with engineering to do AI engineering. It's just kind of it's like a feels bad situation.
You inject.
I can talk about that a bit.
Go for it, Jason.
I think the biggest one that I think about in terms of vibe-based engineering is like, it's like the distance between the code is like a big thing I think about a lot. Where it's like you think about it like your attention, right? It's like you don't want like one function here, then another function like 3 directories away, and then the definition directory like 2 classes in. It's hard to like attend to all of it. So that's one like notion of like space I care about a lot. One.
I actually wrote like a 2-page feedback on a package that I was working on specifically for this. It was built in the exact way that you mentioned because of object-oriented programming. I was like, this does not help with developer velocity at all. Developer context and velocity. So
yeah, so just like
I had to agree with that. Yeah.
Like, how much are you hiding, and how far away does the code feel? Like, I think the reason people like modal, for example, is the fact that the code feels very close to you. There's a run.py, and the code you wrote is in the run.py. And then to run it, you just add like step. Whereas, like, if you, like, have to make a post request to a Docker container that runs, fast API, it just feels far away now. So like when you have to interact with it, you have to go through all these layers to touch the code base, right? And obviously it's like black box API calls, like even more distant. But sometimes it doesn't matter because sometimes you don't care how close it is to you. That's one thing I think about quite a bit, actually. And the second one really is just like, how easy is it to like delete code? Right? Code that is like too sticky or too inflexible, usually the code is hard to delete, and that makes it hard to improve things. And then the last thing with AI engineering, I would just say it's around just like measurement and having very flat logs. Like any attribute that's hard to compute in like your ETL is a value you're not going to end up calculating. Right? Like for example, say I log chat messages. If you log the length of the chat messages at log time, it's really easy. You just do like n chats is length of chat list. But if you do it in Spark, all of a sudden it's going to be a lot harder, and then you might not do it. Now you might not do the analysis, and now it's going to be a feature that you're too lazy to compute unless you really have to. But that's going to go from minute to like half the afternoon, and just like making sure you do things that make you fast and make you like, and recognizing you're lazy is kind of like where a lot of progress happens.
Yeah, to answer this question, I'm going to channel my inner Hamill by saying that I think the one thing, most vibe-based thing that you could do is to look at data. Just look at a lot of data from your LLM output. I think Jason has this thing whereby he has a stand-up, and I think like you just spend 15 minutes just looking at data defects. I can be open and say that I spend 1 to 2 hours a day looking at data. I actually have terminals just streaming LLM output. It's just running prompts and just randomly picking data in some way and just pushing it through. I'm just looking at it all the time. Like, how does the vibe look like? What are adjectives like? What's the output like? What's the length like? How does toxicity look like? If I put in non-English content, like what comes out of it? If I really put in toxic or erotica content, what comes out of it? If you look at enough data, and when I say enough, I mean at least maybe a couple hundred or even 1,000 samples, you start to feel for the edges of where this thing can break. It's like people might come to you. It's like a lot of people come to me. Hey, do we need to test for grammatical errors? I have never seen a grammatical error coming out from LLM. Spelling errors once out of like 10,000 times. Like safety errors, I have almost never seen it. Granted, you can provide adversarial prompts and it'll come out. But then again, if you understand the actual distribution of your data, you would be able to say that, hey, my actual distribution of my input data actually doesn't have this kind of adversarial content. So I won't actually have that kind of data. So if that's the one thing, is really just looking at data. And I think after you've looked at data enough, you can try to quantify it, try to quantify things. And I recently wrote a post about how to evaluate simple things like classification, summarization, and translation. And that helps you look at data in the aggregate, right? By boiling it down to a number. That's the one thing I would say, vibes. And the other thing that judgment-based practice that I would inject into the way, what I'm trying to do now is that I get invited a lot to design document reviews. I am trying to bring along other scientists and engineers into those design reviews so they get the repetition, right, of looking at someone's design reviews, understanding their design decisions, and trying to provide feedback on how they can improve on it. You realize that a lot of these design reviews are great sources of learning judgment. And then after the product, the design review, and after it's been implemented, you revisit that design. We designed something this way. During implementation, what did we find that we missed during the design? And after the product has been shipped, and Jason spoke about this in a tweet yesterday, like you have to stay in a company or project at least 2 years to understand all the things that break. After it's been shipped, you can see how it breaks. That is another great way to learn judgment.
Yeah, we just like really time spent. I mean, I feel like now, like after like 6 years at this company, I was like, okay, like let me just go just like test the judgment and see where any kind of loops are. But for the most part, yeah, you have to you just have to make an assumption and then see yourself become a villain as a result of the assumption.
Yes, and after you.
And the only thing is like, how long did it take before I became the villain? Right? Was I the villain a month in or like 2 years in? And then, sometimes I was like, oh, some decisions I made, I was the villain like 6 years in. Like, okay, this is a good assumption.
Wow, that's a very long feedback loop.
Yeah. Because then you're like, okay, some ideas I know can last 6 years. Like, I feel more confident.
I think Ahmed had a question, and maybe
this is tough because I feel like most of these conferences are organized for the benefit of the companies, and the companies usually do this for recruiting purposes, right?
yes.
So it's like, if you could spin this into recruiting versus training, like the training is for you, the recruiting is for the company,
Yeah.
right? And like, you might be 10% better if you go to the event, but if you recruit 2 people, it's a lot more value. So
Recruiting 2 people is even a lot. I have written proposals to attend a conference, and we say that, okay, we send a team or whatever. We help out at the booth, and then we say, okay, have 10 inbound resumes, high quality inbound resumes, right? And of course, we define high quality by the people that attend the conference who have certain number of experience, and that is a way to quantify the measure. Yeah, that's the short term ROI, and of course, it depends a lot on whether you're hiring or not. And then the other thing is that oftentimes after we attend a conference, we try to write a short report of what we learned. Not just that, what experiments we're going to try the next quarter or next 2 quarters. So it's like, oh, here's the thing that the team absorbed from the conference, and here's how they're going to immediately apply it and possibly make money out of it. The thing is, making money is not guaranteed, right? If you're a scientist, all you can guarantee is I'm going to iterate through these 3 experiments.
Yeah.
And
I
that's
really
valuable.
like that language of like, oh, like, you're sending me to the conference to come back and prepare a memo,
Ideas,
on,
yeah.
like, recommendations for future, right? Like, yeah, I think that's definitely very valuable, right?
That's how I pitch myself. So in my case, it's like, okay, even if I want to go for the trip, I can pay for it myself. Of course, it'd be great if company pays for it, but for me to even speak, I need to get VP level approval, and you don't just bother a VP with, like, you have to have really solid reasons in like 3 bullet points. So that's really difficult. So these are the few things that help a lot: recruitment and ideas that drive the business and serve customers better.
And then it becomes work, right? Like, you are actually
it almost becomes
you're like taking notes, and then after the thing, you're gonna like present to the team, like, hey guys, like, these are like 4 or 5 things we learned from the talks. And then they might come back and say like, well, why can't we just wait for the talks to be on YouTube? And you need to have a good answer for that.
Yeah, exactly. Most of the time people don't attend the recorded talk. Okay, and then there's this other benefit that you can only get in a direct conference. So a few years ago, or maybe 2 years ago, I had this thing that I was thinking about a lot, which is called counterfactual evaluation. I was really convinced that we needed to apply counterfactual evaluation to better evaluate our recommenders, and I wrote several posts about it on positional bias, counterfactual evaluation. Now, when I attended that conference, during cocktail parties or during sessions like this together with Jason, I would ask people, hey, you've tried counterfactual evaluation, does it work? The thing is, 80% of people, like out of like the dozen people I asked, they actually said, no, probably you should try something else before having to rely on counterfactual evaluation, because it's just not worth it. That kind of empirical practitioner know-how and failures and lessons is extremely valuable. And I think I just dodged the bullet by not spending 1 year on that, because so many people have spent years on that and said, probably not worth your time. So that is valuable.
That's definitely part of like the consulting stuff now, where like, hey, like, if you pay me whatever and I help you save like
exactly save the time, right?
I'm
down
free.
The rabbit hole. Yeah,
like so many of the biggest recommendation I had this month really was the fact that like, hey, you're asking me to like think about RAG, and you're asking me about like which vendor supply provider you should do, and you're worried about like which one scales, and just like install Postgres search, text search, because that will take you 2 weeks, 3 weeks. How long have you been thinking about the RAG decision. 2 months, 3 months.
Yeah.
How long will it take to like get a vendor approved, and then like this becomes like 3 months, and then that means your data that comes in will come in 3 months late, and then for you to make improvements, you're going to be like 5 months out, right? And then you're like, oh,
That's time, right? Time to market, especially for a startup. It's extremely valuable.
and it's like, oh, you came in paying me to like help you design RAG, but really use full text search and specifically get user data as soon as possible, and use that to make your next investment.
I have a very, very similar story. So I was advising a science team which wanted to do something very similar to RAG. And they're like, oh, we have all these embeddings. We've tried all these different embedding models. Next step, we've fine-tuned a little bit of embedding models. We've tried different objective function and everything. Here's all the stuff that we've done. And then they're like, okay, Eugene, tell us how to optimize. And I was like, I know this may not be popular, but could you do me a favor and also include BM25 as a baseline benchmark? And of course, like I said that we just include it as a baseline, please. And then of course they did it. And of course I said a few other things about the embedding models.
Yeah.
But I knew what was gonna happen. I was like, and then after a week later we came back and said include a baseline. I said, why does this baseline account for 80% of recall? Eugene, why? It's like, dude, because your data is like that. It's like that's what you need for your specific context. And it's like, then problem solved. But just please include a baseline, BM25. And that solves all of it. So I mean, if you're doing RAG and don't have a BM25 baseline, please include a baseline for BM25. You may be surprised how well it works.
Yeah, for a lot of like synthetic generation of questions, like BM25 is like 85% recall, and then like vector is like 89. You're like, oh well, the overhead of having like a data ingestion service is like so high.
In this case, BM25 was 4x better than semantic retrieval.
For recall.
Because for recall. No. Or rather, of all the universe of things that could be recalled is 100%. BM25 accounted for 80%, and semantic only accounted for 20%.
Oh,
Which was so simple, right? And it's so explainable. That's the thing. They loved how explainable it was. Far more effective, far more explainable, and just open search cluster. Even an open search node, not even a cluster. Bam, solved. No need to train all these models. Or it works, right?
Yeah, but I think that's yeah. I mean that was like that was the biggest recommendation. Was just like, don't even spend more time. Just like,
and that's the thing about judgment, right? Like, how would someone new in this industry right now know that, okay, before I use semantic retrieval, I should try BM25. Before I use DSPy, I should try instructor. Before I fine tune my own models, I should maybe focus on prompt engineering and few-shot, like finding few-shot examples. So like this, I think a lot of it is because Jason's lazy, so he's always doing an easy thing. That's me as well. I'm lazy as heck, and of course I have a ton of other problems to solve. So I try to really optimize for 80-20.
Because a
lot of people,
what do I want? What do I actually want? Do I want RAG? No, I want like happier users.
You want to solve the problem, exactly, and RAG is just one way.
Right. Yeah, it's like, I want happier users. How can I have happier users? Well, I need to know what they're asking and making sure, like, will I make them happier by making them wait 3 months, or will I make them happier by looking at their questions and going like, oh, like half the times where you're asking about like times, that's not a vector solution, right? But if you go like, oh wow, a lot of the time people are like searching the word jungle and like expecting the word forest to be popped up, like, okay, maybe we need vector search.
Yeah, exactly. Or you could just do a synonym thing. Or I think vector search is really valuable when let's say the one example that I always use is, let's say you're searching for New York and people explain it like the Big Apple. I'm pretty sure vector search would put them very close, but I think no amount of synonyms would ever match.
But like, how often? That's not 5% of the questions. You know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. It's like, unless maybe like we're like,
I'm just ranting now as an old fogey.
Yeah. Anyways. Well, just like the BM25 stuff, there's like a new library that's like written in Rust, and Postgres has a new like Rust implementation of BM25.
Wow.
And I think we're just gonna recommend doing that. And then I'll probably just like email them like 2-3 months later and just be like, how do they go?
And you know what's very important before you do any of these? Having good evals. The one reason why teams can iterate very fast is like, guys, how do you even know you're on the right track? Can you please just label 100 samples and just measure against that? And then once you have those evals, you can run hundreds of experiments across those evals in an automated fashion. You don't have to eyeball your output anymore.
Yeah.
So figure out how to have those evals and quantify those evals is actually very difficult in some cases. Yeah. Do either of y'all? I can share my process.
I want to hear yours because my answer is no.
I have a weekly paper club that some of y'all might be in. I think Ahmed is in there. Whereby every week we go through one paper. So if you imagine that you go for 50 sessions, that's 50 weeks, 50 papers. The other thing is that if you go to my site, you notice that sometimes I write this big have this big write-ups where I try to summarize what's happening. So I think a recent one was how to evaluate classification, summarization, and translation tasks. So as part of that, there's like 20 references. So I go through those papers. I sort of skim them, but the ones that are really important and the ones I actually want to apply, I will go through them very deeply. I think like for one of my more popular write-ups, like large language model patterns for design patterns for large language model applications. I think that was like 50 different papers. And I really went through those very in depth because I really wanted to figure out, hey, how to do retrieval method generation well, how to do fine tuning well, how to do evals well. So based on that, I think it'd be easily 200 to 300 papers. But so you may think that, hey, doesn't that cost a lot of time? It depends. For my work, I'm an applied scientist, and I'm supposed to work on things that are just really at the edge that a solid software engineer or senior engineer is not able to do yet. So I'm supposed to try to crack the very hard, ambiguous problems. But by reading these papers, like before I try to crack a problem, if I read just 12 papers and figure out what works and what didn't work. Okay, they always say what works. You have to read between the lines to understand what didn't work. And I tell you, what didn't work is far more valuable than what works. I realize that now. And so that when I do my writing, in my most recent writing on evals, I actually tell you what doesn't work, at least in my use cases, so you can save the time. So by reading just at least a dozen, doing a lit review of at least a dozen, it has accelerated my ability to solve the problem. And actually, in some cases, I've seen scientists that just take the first paper that they're excited about, try to implement it, and it becomes it's a local optima. If you think about it, that it's local optimum. So you need like at least some decent knowledge, and you can just skim to sort of understand the field of the problem you're trying to solve. So yeah, my answer is yes, I do that. And it does get easier to read LLM research papers. Actually, LLM research papers are oftentimes somewhat easy. If you think about it, it's like chain of thought. Here's the prompt, explain step by step, or here's the self flag. And a lot of that. Here's the memory. So it depends. Yeah.
Yeah, I spent like I spent basically like 2014 to like 2018 like reading papers every day from like 10 p.m. to like midnight.
That's a lot. Wow.
But this was in the world of computer vision and like model training, where it's just like these are different architectures, this is what we're doing, blah 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 blah. And that was like applicable because I was like a scientist. Now, as it's just like I think so many of these LLM research papers are like very low quality. They're all like the papers I used to read were the ones that like, were coming out of Google. Now it's just like 21-year-old from Berkeley is writing like a prompt engineering paper. It's like there's too much noise.
Yes.
And like there's nothing like you can't convince me that like the 21-year-old at Berkeley is like a year ahead of me in terms of reasoning. Like we could have written that paper. We just didn't have time because we had other things to do. Like,
or we just didn't bother. We just didn't need the status. We're just not playing the academia game.
Right. And so like instructor, I had like an example where I made the LLM generated DAG, and then 6 months later it was like LLM compiler is like a paper that came out. And then when I did instructor, I was like, oh, like validators make sense. I should catch the error message and send it back to the LLM. And this is like a whole like assertion in this paper that came out, and I was like, okay, like there's no way they're like that much ahead of me. Like we can't just like think about this versus like inventing Atom. I could not have invented Atom.
Exactly.
I could
Or
not figured out that like residual networks were the ones that would help you scale out, blah 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 blah. And so I think the nature of the research is different. Common sense makes more sense, and the judgment is like, if you're doing like LLM stuff, you're mostly fighting like integration hell. Like
yeah,
it's more about like how do you get the emails into the prompt and less about like what is the magical prompting technique that's going to make it work.
I also find that one thing, I actually like to read papers that stand off test of time. So like something that stands the test of time in like the traditional sense is like 10 years or 20 years, something like drop out, right? Or word to vec. Now in LLM world, stands the test of time is probably 6 months or 18 months. But some things that meet that bar is like low rank adaptation, right? LoRa or QLoRa or direct preference optimization, right? If models are trained and are and on that method and it's successful, you're gonna want to adopt it. And but the thing is, when you adopt it, you want to read the paper, so you are careful with how you use it. That's how I pick actually. You also want to be very picky in the papers you write, because we only have so much time, right? And I don't know how many papers does archive have a day, like hundreds. So
yeah, the other thing too, it's like these papers are when the paper is written, the time from when the idea came out to the paper is very long. If I figure something out in Instructor, I write a blog post like the next day.
Yeah.
But when research figures it out, they need to like write the paper, they gotta get the review, they gotta get the data set, they gotta whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then like 5 months has gone by. In which case, like GPT-4 Turbo is out, and like none of this is useful. Like when like Anthropic's model came out, like nothing made sense anymore. Like none of the evals made sense. It was just about like what was feasible in production. I think what happened with the LLM research though is like we had so many frameworks like the LangChains and Llama indexes that were like implementing every paper and then like posting about it. You don't really know what will stand the test of time.
Exactly.
Right.
So I'm actually here's a lot of my leadership asked me how will we keep pace with the industry, right? And here's my response. I don't know if it's good response, bad response, but my response is I'm okay with not being the first mover, as long as I'm a fast second mover. And if you read Peter Thiel's 0 to 1, right, he actually says that first mover is not really important. All you want to be is the last mover. And what does it mean to be the last mover? Is after you moved in, no one gets in.
Yeah.
So it's like you just want to execute. Maybe you're not that fast. Your second mover, you execute so well that bam, that's it.
Instructor, baby.
Yeah. Has
Dude.
anyone ever come into the instructor space since then?
I mean, none of the things that are coming after Instructor have like more than like 200, 300 downloads a day. That's the main thing I've noticed. But dude, I did some math. I'm having 30% growth month over month. If that's the case, in 6 months, 500,000 downloads a month.
I don't know, man. I mean, that sounds a little bit like extrapolation.
But it's like it's very smooth though. It's not like this is like for the past like year, it's been 30% growth.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe you can extrapolate that.
Yeah, I mean, sure, maybe not 6 months, but like the fact that it's not like in 3 years I'll be 500,000. It's like give it a couple of months. Like the first digit is gonna start moving. I think we can get to 1% of all OpenAI downloads.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
I'm pretty stoked about that. But
I haven't looked at it recently, but you support Anthropic now, right?
Yeah, Anthropic, Bedrock.
Sweet.
I see the smile. Yeah. Grok is supported. Cohere is supported. Anthropic is supported. Yeah, it's a couple because they all have function calling now. So there's like very easy ways of writing prompts.
Yeah.
Very excited. I'm very excited to get to 200,000 and then 500,000.
But why? Why do you care about this number?
Because it's actually a measure of utility.
I see. Okay, you care about number because it demonstrates it.
Like I'm actually like someone's actually like trying to do something. Like the GitHub star, I don't really care about.
Yeah.
Because but that's my DAO.
Yep.
Right? Like there's no other number that's the only number that matters. If I make no commits in the next 6 months and that number increases, I'm winning. I think I'm winning more if I had no commits and the number keeps changing.
Because it's like self-growth, right? Even without you, yeah.
It's like PMF to me, right? Like, and the growth is like blows my mind. Never in a million years did I think like I would actually be doing like an open source thing that is.
Did you think if Flight was open source, you would have done as well?
No, there's no way. I would not use Flight if it was open source. Because when you build something internally, you build it with the intention that you're smarter than everyone else in the building.
I see.
So like you make all the rules. You can't do anything I don't let you do. Right? Because that's because constricting that is what allows me to optimize the company.
Right? Exactly. Yeah. Whereas now you have to write a broader framework.
And the reason Flight was like success was because I can go, okay, like this entire team is just being suboptimal. I've like caught you, and I'm gonna fix it. $20 million. But with instructor, it's more like I need to give you like one verb and one noun, and you need to learn how to write. Because if I hold anybody's hand, I'm restricting someone else. Right? Like I trust the consumer of instructor to like be able to write their own code. And so there's no Rails. Right?
Yep.
The guarantee is just response model is of type T. You return an instance of T.
Yeah, you treat them like adults. I think that makes sense. Yeah.
Because Flight only needs to help 60 people.
Yeah.
Right. But instructor now has like 700,000 total downloads or something. Like that's not 60 people.
Yeah, that's a lot. I think Stefan has an interesting question.
Oh. I just don't read anything. I don't read any papers, no podcasts. What about you?
I wait for people to tell me twice that I should read something. That is like, it's like someone will come to me, it's like, hey, have you read this new XYZ prompting technique? I say, yeah, I have not. And to be frank, I still haven't read the Mistral papers, or there's still a lot of papers I haven't read. Like all the new stuff that comes out, I don't read it yet until I actually have to use it, or three high believability people have told me that I would use that. I should read that. Then I read it.
Yeah. There's just too much noise, and like
there's too much noise. Yeah.
Everyone has incentives now. Like they just want views and like distribution, which is fine. But like I can't spend my time based off of like views and distribution, right? But also like I think if you can just think, you can be a good prompt engineer. Like it's just critical thinking. Like
I would agree. And I think how I try to traverse the noise is I only read stuff that I can actually immediately apply within the week or within a month. Like it's like I'm trying to solve some really difficult problems, and that's how I do my literature review, right? What other resources have solved these problems? So I'm constantly sort of traversing, reading through papers and understanding what's happening, but they may not be the most recent. So if something that's really recent comes out that tries to solve it, that's amazing, that's perfect. But I don't necessarily look at the most recent ones.
Yeah, that's basically what I agree. Definitely. Yeah, I would say outlines is definitely easier if you want to work with the like Hugging Face models, but it is very easy to use Llama CPP Python with instructor now, so there's like a good trade-off.
What is outlines, by the way? Is it like
outlines is
constraint grammar?
Yeah. That's mostly built off completely from constraint grammar. I was talking to Remy. I think outlines is going to consider supporting instructor at some point for closed source models, but We'll see. Going from problems to books versus books to problems. I'm just going from problem to problem.
So you see, right? I think the first person going from problems to books, right? There's so many sayings that do the same thing. Focus on the problem, not the tech. Don't chase after every shiny new tech and everything, right?
Again, it's the what is it in service of?
Exactly.
Like, why are you reading papers? Like, why are you reading papers?
Because it could be that you are naturally curious and interested in that domain and you just want to level up. But a lot of times the value happens when you're actually solving a problem.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Oh my god.
And I just want to say something is that, man, I'm really loving how today's session is. There's so many great questions being just dropped in the chat, right? That Jason and I can try to help. It's almost like it's like becoming a real office hours.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate that.
I feel like a mentor, you know. I think the
I feel like you are a mentor.
I really like the credit question.
Oh yeah, the credit question is good. I think the one on convincing leadership to go to conferences was also, it's actually a very hard problem. And the thing is, no one actually writes about any of this stuff. Yeah. Maybe you should collect all these and just tweet about it.
I mean, so what should we write down? Dude, I'm too tired. I can't do it. I'm too tired.
I'm gonna see if I can just copy paste all of this and then put it into Claude. Hey Claude, can you summarize the tweet thread? Oh shoot, but then our responses are in the voice. Okay, I heard Gemini is available now. I don't have access to the 1 minute context. I wonder if you can just summarize this entire YouTube video.
Oh, I actually have everything recorded.
Yeah, and it's actually in the YouTube video, right? Can Gemini summarize YouTube videos? That would be pretty cool.
I have some live notes. It got cut off completely. I should.
Wow, those are cool notes. I mean, yeah. I mean, if someone really wants to go the last mile on this, and if you have Gemini, just drop the YouTube link in there and let's see what Gemini summarizes.
Yeah, because I think the credit one is like a pretty good small blog post. The research one too. I think the big question is people are being told to do things, but they don't know what it's for. And I think if you keep asking about the why, at some point, it becomes a little bit more pure. Right? It's like, why am I reading papers? Because I want to learn more. Why do I need to learn more? Like, is it just because I'm curious, right? Or is it because I need to like solve a problem? If I need to solve a problem, like, that's a bad example. But...
So do we need to teach people to ask the 5 whys? Just ask why more?
Yeah, basically. I think that's a big part of it, right? Like when I was like in art school, a lot of it was just like keep attacking the same question like multiple times, and you get to some like weird truth that like you didn't really realize. Yeah.
There is. We actually adopt this in correction of errors. So if there's a high severity event, we ask why it happened. Oh, why it happened because this engineer did that thing wrong. Oh, why did that happen? Oh, because the system allowed you to do that thing wrong. Oh, why did that happen? Oh, because we actually wanted to solve it, but we didn't have enough time. Oh, why didn't you have enough time? You just keep asking why until you get to the root cause that's actually causing the issue, even though it's several steps away.
Yeah, like why do you want credit? Promotion? Why want a promotion? Like more money?
Yeah, I think that's a great one. I want more recognition. Or it could be that a lot of times, why do you want a promotion? Well, because I want access to the opportunity, right? Sometimes there are certain rooms that require a certain title to get into. And I'm speaking metaphorically, of course.
I never think of that actually, but it's hilarious.
Really? Don't you think so? So I have So there are
I also
several
just, like,
times.
do what I want to do. Like, I've never had a VP say like I can't do the thing. Like, I was always on special projects, so it was never like, oh, once I'm with the VPs, I can finally do this thing I wanted to do.
I think it's slightly different. So how I'm thinking about it is that, okay, Eugene could be saying something like 3 or 4 times, like could be advising a team 3 or 4 times to do something, but then they just don't take the advice. Now, what happens is that he
Hardcore.
asks his principal engineer or his director to just be his microphone. They say the exact same thing. And then that happens, right? It's like, okay, maybe it's a matter of not having enough influence, not
Right.
being convincing enough. But I think a lot of times people respect the title and the title opens doors.
Yeah, like for me, I would see that as like, why do I want the credit? Because I want everyone to have the memory of my success. Like, I want people to know that I'm
Ah,
enough that when I say something, I want them to like listen to what I say.
yeah.
I never think of it from a title perspective. I think of it as just like, hey guys, the last 3 times I made a call, we did really well.
Yeah.
I need to make a call again. Like, and the manager goes like, I believe you.
And people actually know that, and eventually people actually remember that. So in Amazon, one of our leadership principles is are right a lot. So is the person generally right, or are they able to update their mindsets? And one thing that I think one thing that we consider before someone can become promoted to senior is, do they have the quality of being right a lot? Because it's extremely important if you're to be right a lot. Because if you're not right, firstly, you will give wrong feedback to juniors, and therefore everyone starts being less right. And as a senior, you're expected to be right a lot, to understand what are the problems that are happening in the org, even though no one is telling you these are the problems, but you have the right nose to smell these problems and the right judgment on what the right solution is. So
I love
that's,
that.
yeah. It also happens to be one of my a lot of people have given me that feedback. In Amazon, our appraisal is very easy. It's just like, what are your superpowers? What are your growth areas? So one of my superpowers in terms of numbers, number of feedback I've gotten on that is right a lot. So that's valuable.
What's the growth area?
Ah, so easy. My growth area consistently has been think big. Leaders think big. I don't think big. I'm like, let's ship this prototype, get customer feedback. Let's do this. It's like, and
What?
I've always
Okay,
been
so
encouraged. Yeah,
let's break this down a little bit because you said I can't ship big, and
I
then
can't think big.
yeah, think
Yeah.
big, but then your self description was never like, I don't want to do next. You sound like you just wanted to ship sooner.
Yes,
So why is sooner less big?
because I should have maybe taken a step back and think about how maybe we can go slower but bigger. Right? It's like I'm solving this for this team or these 2 teams, but hey, think about the org, or even bigger.
But like,
Think about AWS.
why are those two related? Right? Because in my mind, I would say like, I want to ship. Like, I want to think big. That's why we need to ship now, because these are the building blocks we will need to build to get to the next thing. Or like, when I think big as fuck, but I also want
Yeah.
everything to be done now. And like, here's the plan to get it now. And let's make sure we don't like ship big, think big. Is not the same thing as like take longer, right?
I think there's a little bit of a tension between bias for action and delivering results and thinking big, right? Like, okay, I'm reading the leadership principle. Thinking small is a self-fulfilling prophecy. Leaders create and communicate a bold direction that inspires results. They think differently and look around corners for ways to serve customers. So how I think about it is that I'm trying to solve the problem for these teams or the org. I'm being asked, okay, don't just solve the problem for books. Solve the problem for Amazon or AWS.
Right.
And in a sense, you could almost imagine that think big is almost like never ending. You can always think bigger. So I think some people say, it's maybe just a cop out for a lot of folks in the sense that they just don't know how you can improve. But it's been consistently I've received consistent feedback. Eugene, you need to think bigger, think bigger, think bigger. So I'm gonna try and work on that. Yeah.
Yeah, because I feel like the thing I keep smelling off of that comment of like think big versus like, oh, but I want to like ship incrementally, is like
Exactly.
like I think the takeaway, like if I heard that from someone, I would say, oh, what maybe you're not doing is taking things to their like conclusions. So here's an example. So we're doing like recruiting. So I'm doing recruiting for Trunk Tools, and they're building a RAG app. And I was like, we need to get this RAG app built out. Like, we need to ship this as quickly as possible. Why? Because the RAG app is boring as fuck.
Okay.
But these are all the incredibly important building blocks, and this is the only thing we can use to learn about the problem.
Yeah.
Us to build the machine learning system that can detect like the risk of rework. Rework is when you
Deprecate, rebuild.
Something doesn't show, someone doesn't show up, contracts are late.
Okay.
Reworks is a $1 trillion company, a $1 trillion problem. Okay, who gives a fuck with like the drywall guy shows up late and is like, how thick is the drywall and like what floor am I working on? You might spend 50 cents of GPT-4 credits and save the company $5 in hourly time. You could spend $40 to save $400,000 over the weekend with a 10% probability, right? But in order to do that, we have to ship the RAG app now because we have to.
Exactly. You have to iterate fast.
So I think there's a separation of thinking big and shipping soon. Like I want to maybe call that out a little bit more aggressively. Just like maybe it's not the thinking big, but just like the next step. It feels like the next step feels like a smaller thing to tackle.
Yeah. So I think the next step to tackle is like maybe a delivery results thing. So here's an example of the tension between shipping fast and thinking big. So this is a thing I do in the sense that if I have an idea, I'm going to prototype it like within a day or 2 days, and I'm going to give a demo, and then people will be excited, and then we run off with it, and then we ship it. So the feedback I've gotten is that, hey, instead of prototyping it, okay, prototyping it's really cool, but don't just solve it for the team. Write a press release, write a PRFAQ, and circulate it to the VPs. Now think about how you could solve it for the org or for Amazon in general. So you may take a longer time to ship it, but now you're collecting more requirements and understanding what the org can use. That's not natural to me. For me, I just want to solve a problem for customers really quickly. But I guess the encouragement, the feedback I've been given is to think about the corners, right? It's like, okay, you see this problem, but how can you see the bigger problem or the bigger meta problems or patterns in the problems? Talk to more people and understand what the more common problem is, and then try to solve that instead of trying to solve the problem for these few teams quickly, but try to solve the problem for these few organizations quickly.
Yeah, so maybe another way to think about it too is like, because there I think of it in terms of like, what are the abstractions I'm designing?
Yeah.
Right. Like the example for flight was, okay, I built flight because I just wanted like different verbs. Right. And I was like, oh, like I need to build similar items carousel. So what is the abstraction? I need to take product ID and return list of product ID. So when I build my thing, the abstraction is like list expansion, like item to list. And then I go, well, every single thing you see on the website is a list of products.
Exactly. Yeah.
So okay. And then like 3 weeks later, oh, this can be used to serve the entire company because the abstraction is just like.
So that's pretty big. Yeah. And your abstraction was good. Yeah.
Right. Same with instructor. I was like, I really want JSON out, but like, I don't want to specify the JSON. I really want a model because if I get a model, I get a type system. If I get a type system, there's like correctness guarantee that I get. Okay, so the abstraction is like types. And the implementation detail is like you get JSON. But maybe there's something there too around like maybe the trick is maybe you don't have to be the one that thinks big, but if you find the right abstraction, it will just grow because it fits the space that you're trying to.
Yeah, a lot of it is also like the domain. So you can imagine I'm trying to solve language model related problems for recommendations and media, right? So now I'm working. I've been working with people from very different domains.
Yeah.
Like I don't know, some of the craziest stuff are like healthcare and finance. So now how do you build guardrails that apply to all of them? It's really, really difficult because different levels of risk. So then it's now figure out, okay, how do we ship something that doesn't hold the existing use cases back, but yet can be applied to other use cases across different domains. And you're right, having the right abstraction is a big chunk of it. But also, the thing is, I honestly don't understand the other domains that well, like healthcare or finance. So, and then that's why you, as a consultant, you get to jump across all these different domains, and you get to sample a lot.
Yeah, but I'm kind of like fixated on the think big thing. Because it's like when I think of think big, it's like, oh, let me come up with the simplest extraction that has the most scope.
That would be a little bit different from how most people understand think big.
Yeah,
Most
like,
people understand think big is like, oh, big vision, like building rockets to go to Mars. Or whereas Eugene is just like, I just want to help you understand things a little easier and a little faster.
But it's like think big is also like discover penicillin.
Yeah, could be some.
This applies to everybody, right? Like,
yeah,
like LangChain is big, but LangChain is big in a way that like I want instructor to be big.
Yeah,
but in a different way. Like I want instructor to be big because I want instructor to be requests.
Or like AWS is think big. It's like it created an entire ecosystem. Okay, but then again, if you're comparing yourself to creating AWS, then yeah, you probably can't do anything that's bigger than AWS.
Yeah.
Like
right.
create an entire cloud industry.
Yeah. So there's this idea of like from something small, you can like just sort of reason and make sure you were building stepping stones to think big. And the other one is like if you create a very like pure abstraction, the scope of this abstraction is very big.
Yeah, already can expand to fit any problem.
Yeah, because it's like the ICP of types is like every programmer.
Yeah,
it's like if you pip install OpenAI, you should just pip install instructor.
Together, right? No brainer just to do that.
Like why would you ever want to do response.choices 0.message.content?
How?
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know what you mean. You know, we've been almost going on for 2 hours, and I cannot imagine why there are still 12 people on the stream.
Dude, listen, I've been watching like a bunch of like Twitch people, and they're just like, yeah, like I spent a year, and we had like one person watch, and I was like, that.
Wow, I think, you know what? I am curious about how Gemini is able to work on video. I think I might just over the weekend, just take this YouTube video and drop it in Gemini and just summarize it as a tweet thread. Maybe and if it resonates and it's helpful, maybe we could just partner and write summaries of all these lessons that we have from Office Hours.
I mean the other thing really is just like separate tweets. It should be less of a thread of like this is the video that happened.
Yeah.
Right. It's more like
different questions and answers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just too. I think if I had a time, I would really love to dig into all the soft implicit problems, like how do you convince management of this, or how do you pick the right problems to solve, or how do you recruit well.
Just gotta do voice, and you gotta hire a writer, man. Oh yeah,
that is actually true. We already have the voice, right? We have the transcripts.
Yeah.
We just summarize it a little bit, make it a little bit more coherent within a narrative. Hey, actually, why don't
Yeah.
What we should do that with Joseph.
Yeah, because I think like the big thing too is just like
I like how Z put it, the trade craft.
What does that mean? Oh,
I've never heard of that term before, but I think that's the stuff, right? Like some of the soft skill stuff.
That's
just
one
not
of the reasons I started writing, because I was just like, wow, no one is writing. Like a third of the things I put on Hacker News goes viral. Like I'm not convinced that I'm
show off.
I think it's realized like there's just actually not that much out there. Like most human beings on Earth do not write.
That's true. Unfortunately, true.
Yeah. Like, and you think, I don't know how to describe it, but like there's just not that much writers. Like you just have to write. Like there's the only writing is the only thing you can do as like a humanity almost, like
language, right? Using language to convey information.
Yeah, and you're just like there's just not that much writers. Like
I think a lot of people convey information through other means like talking or tweeting or posting or just at work. Maybe they're just writing so much at work.
No,
But I think I would definitely love to
maybe
see.
Amazon, but not any company I've worked at.
Oh, okay. Oh yeah, Amazon is very writing heavy. Yeah, the meta skills. Yeah.
But it is just like, I think you just have to write because no one else is writing. Like, you think like, oh, like what do I know? But it's like,
That's a great point. So a lot of people ask me how do you pick the topics to write? Essentially, I pick the topics to write when I try to find an answer to them online and I can't find the answer. So I just try to write the answer for myself and I just share it anyway. So
yeah. Yeah, I guess for me it's always just been like, I have a half-baked thought, I just need to fully bake it.
yeah, and writing helps you do that.
Yeah, because for me, like, I just think about stuff so much that if I don't write it, like once I write something down,
you let it out,
never
right?
think about it again.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's why I journal a bit sometimes to help with that. All right. Any last questions from folks on the stream, or I guess folks on the stream just listening to us while on their bus ride home? So
yeah, they're just like doing their laundry and like eating,
listening to the radio of two guys just chatting with the occasional alpha.
Yeah, well, I'm just like chewing and drinking chocolate milk by the gallon.
Hey, let me ask you, what LLM are you using now? Like for your day to day, it's like GPT, Claude, Opus. Yeah, I'm doing Opus as well. So
my code is Opus. My
cursor is Opus. Chatbot is Opus as well. Okay.
Yeah, and then one of my goals in the near term is to make Raycast like even better.
That would be sweet.
Like I would love Code Runner on Raycast.
Where Raycast can run Python?
Yeah, I want to do like,
why
AI space data.csv and do like analyze this for me.
Oh, that would be cool. So almost like ChatGPT's like data analysis mode, but you just dump in data.
Yes. Because it's like the file's right there.
Yeah, exactly, right.
Yeah.
So that'd be kind of cool.
All right, I'm gonna sign off because I'm.
Same here. I'm gonna try to figure out
like 20 minutes.
If the $20 for Gemini is worth it to analyze that transcript, and we'll see.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. Like a writer is like $30 an hour.
No, the editor that we have is way more expensive.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Joseph is like way more than $30 an hour.
But it's I mean, he charges by the word, which is like actually more like real writing.
Yeah. Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
All right, cool, man. I'll see you. Peace out and enjoy your Mexico trip if we don't chat next week.
Thank you. All right, let's end the stream.